العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
And you've got the handout. Last week we stopped on where? Or the last lesson, where did we stop? Who remembers? Anwa' al-Majaz. Meaning we studied Majaz or not? لا. We finished haqiqah, صح? We finished haqiqah. So make sure you've got the handout, yeah? نبدأ صح؟ شيخ عبد الرحمن. طيب, just as a quick recap, last week we stopped off at al-haqiqah. Al-haqiqah is what? What is al-haqiqah? لفظ مستعمل فيما وضع له. A word that is used for what it was originally placed for. طيب, a word that is used for its original meaning. مثلا, أسد. What comes to mind when you say أسد? حيوان مفترس. قمر. What comes to mind when you say qamar? Just qamar. Ash-shams, sun. What comes to mind? Bahar. Al-bahar, the ocean. What comes to mind? The actual sea. So that is the meaning of haqiqah. When you hear a word, you automatically understand its original meaning. طيب. Then the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi, he divided the haqiqah into three types. حقيقة لغوية, حقيقة شرعية, and حقيقة عرفية. What is حقيقة لغوية? Put your hand up if you know. نعم. تفضل. حقيقة لغوية.
لفظ المستعمل فيما
وضع
له
نعم في اللغة. Excellent. Using a word in a way that it is used in the lugha. The asl for it, you're using it in a way that it is used in the lugha. نعم. مثلا رأيت أسدا في الغابة. I saw an asad in the غابة. I saw a lion in the forest. If someone says that, what are you going to say? You're going to automatically think and assume that he saw a normal lion. طيب. Or مثلا الصلاة بمعنى الدعاء. The examples that you have, number one, as-salah bima'na du'a. As-salah, one of the meanings of the salah in the Arabic language is a du'a. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَسَكَنٌ لَهُمْ. وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ is underlined. It's underlined in the first example. طيب, so that is used, or as-salah is used in its what? Linguistical form. In its linguistic form. طيب. Also, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِذَا دُعِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى طَعَامٍ فَلْيُجِبْ. If one of you is called to ta'am, to eat, فَلْيُجِبْ, then let him answer and go to the walima or the aqiqah, wherever it may be. فَإِنْ كَانَ مُفْتِرًا فَلْيَطْعَمْ. If he's not fasting, then let him eat. وَإِنْ كَانَ صَائِمًا فَلْيُصَلِّ. If he's fasting, فَلْيُصَلِّ, let him pray. If he's fasting, pay attention. If he's fasting, let him pray. What does fasting here mean? If he's fasting, let him pray. Does this mean if someone calls you to a walima, you go, and if you're fasting, you go to the corner, you start praying salah? لا. فَلْيُصَلِّ أي فَلْيَدْعُ. Let him make dua. So the Messenger salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi used the word salli or فَلْيُصَلِّ in its linguistical form. Although some scholars say it is not in its linguistical form. طيب, على كل. الزكاة in the linguistic meaning, in the Arabic meaning, it means what? الطهارة. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Verily, the one who is successful is the one who has purified it. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. زَكَّاهَا بِمَاذا? He has purified it with what in Surah Al-Shams? With أعمال الصالحة, believing in Iman and Tawheed and so on. بالأعمال الصالحة. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. So he has purified it. طيب. نعم. الصوم linguistically means what? Al-imsak, to refrain from something. Maryam alayhi salam, she said, إِنِّي نَظَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا. Verily, I've done an oath that I will not fast. That I will fast. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. I will not talk to an ins today. I will not talk to anyone today. So what did she refrain from? أمسكت عن ماذا? She refrained from kalam. طيب. So the meaning that it has what? Is the linguistical meaning in the Arabic language. طيب. And that's حقيقة لغوية. Let's go to حقيقة شرعية. We studied this last week. لكن it is the lafz that is used according to what it has been placed for in the Sharia. مثلا الزكاة. Zakah is the zakah that we know of. As-salah, the 5 daily prayers. Wudu. Wudu is tahara in Arabic. Lakin in the Sharia, what does it mean? The wudu that is the 5 daily prayers that we do, the wudu that we do. As-salah, linguistically, we've already studied what it means. Lakin what does it mean in the Sharia of Islam? The salah, that's aqwal wa af'al. The salah that contains actions and speech. You start with Allahu Akbar, you finish with the taslim. طيب, you finish with the taslim. What is the fa'idah of this taqsim? Or before that, let's go to the urfiyya. The urfiyya is al-lafz al-musta'mal fima wudi'a lahu fil urf. It is the word that is used, it is a word that is used according to the custom of the people. According to the custom of the people. And the example that the fuqaha, the usuliyin that always mention is ad-dabba. Dabba is everything that strikes the earth, everything that moves. A car is a dabba, a human is a dabba, a horse is a dabba, a camel, a cow, all of these are they're called dabba. Lakin the urf, dabba now is used for a 4-legged animal. Camels, donkeys, horses, and so on. So that is the urf of the people. Also ad-dar. Ad-dar, linguistically, dar means a house. هذا داري, هذا دار جاري. That is my house, and this is the house of my neighbor. Like in some culture, in some places, some lands, dar means ghurfa. Dar means ghurfa, a room. It means a room. And I'll give you an example. مثلا, and we'll study in Majaz. لكن an oyster, or the difference that you can, haqiqah and majaz that we shall see. What is an oyster in general? What is an oyster linguistically? 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if someone said to you oyster, what would you think? The sea creature, shell, animal, whatever, صح? طيب. 25 years ago, if someone would say to you oyster, that's what would come to mind, صح? طيب. If someone says to you, give me an oyster today, what are you going to say? You're going to give him the blue card, صح? Why? That is a haqiqah urfiyya now. So if someone says to you, quickly, I'm going, give me an oyster. If you give him that seashell, he says, what are you doing? Are you crazy? صح? Like you're expecting the oyster card, صح? طيب. So that is what is meant by the haqiqah. It is used in a way that is real, but according to the custom of the people. Is that understood? The last masala with regards to this is, what is the fa'idah? What is the benefit of saying haqiqah lughawiyya, shar'iyya, urfiyya?
The shar' sometimes uses it, sometimes shar'.
Naam. Okay, so the shari' sometimes uses words in a linguistical way and sometimes in a shar'i way. Muhammad?
It allows us to understand what is being said based on context.
Nah. We're able to understand what is being referred to and the meaning of a verse or a hadith or even a statement of the scholars.
We shouldn't deviate from the haqiqah unless it's a qarina.
نعم, that's coming. That's when we're studying Majaz, inshallah. Lakin, you've all said it, mashallah, jazakumullah khayran. Also, when you're reading a fiqh book, مثلا, and salah comes to you, what is the meaning? What if you're reading an adab book, a book to do with adab, al-adab al-arabi? More often than not, the linguistical meaning it will be. It will be the linguistical meaning. Also, when you're dealing with the people, what meaning are you going to use? The urf, what the people are used to. So it's important to understand these haqa'iq. طيب. Now this lesson we haven't studied. Lakin, Majaz. Now, the way it's put on here, it's on page 2. This is a summary of what the Shaykh says, rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah. And Majaz, what is Majaz first and foremost? It is to use a word or words to indicate something different from its literal meaning. something from its literal meaning. Now this is studied in ilm al-balagha. To be honest, it's not something that is connected directly to ilm al-fiqh. Okay? And we said usul al-fiqh yakhdim mada al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh, it serves fiqh. So anything that doesn't serve fiqh shouldn't be from usul al-fiqh. Lakin the scholars, they mention Majaz in all of their books in Usul al-Fiqh, so it's important that we obviously study it. And whether, مثلا Shaykh ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, he says there's no Majaz in the language, lakin he mentions it because that is what is talked about in books of Usul al-Fiqh. So Majaz in summary means to use a word in other than its correct meaning, or what it was initially put there for. A simple example, the oyster that we just mentioned. Sah? Oyster now, it's a different meaning. Or if we say that is haqiqah. Mathalan, I say to you, it's like an oven outside. It is like an oven outside. What is the word that I've used? Oven. Oven, sah? What is an oven?
Okay.
That object that you cook food with, sah? طيب. The word oven here, what does it mean? What does it mean? I say to you now, it's like an oven outside. If I say to you, are you going to go looking for an oven outside? Like, what do you understand from that? It is what? Baking hot. It's hot outside. That's the meaning that you're going to understand from it. Sah? طيب. Oven now, in this sentence that I've just said, have I used it in its normal linguistical form? No. It is a tarkib. I've used it in a way that you now understand something else from it. You understand something else from it. Also slang, for example, slang. Give me a slang, something that is a slang. Something that obviously isn't disrespectful, like in something normal. Beef. Beef, yeah, beef. Beef is what? Beef is meat, صح? Lakin if someone says to you, this person, that person, they've got beef, you're not going to look in their hands to see if they've got meat in their hands, are you? You're going to say, subhanallah, stop the beef, you're going to say, sah? So beef here is majaz. You've used it في غير ما وضع له. You've used it in a way that it is not being used in the lugha. Give me another example. Huh?
Sick. Someone saying that's sick.
Excellent. Someone saying sick. Sick, for مثلا. Sick, right? Sick linguistically means vomiting. It's a marad, صح? Someone's either vomiting or it's a marad. He's sick. Like if someone says he bought a sick car. Yeah. Now, the person's not going to think he was ill or he bought a car that was ill. What is he going to think? He bought a nice car. That is isti'malun majazi. That's using that word, sick, in a majazi way. Is that understood? So all of these examples that we're going to use now, all of these examples that we're going to see now, we're going to come across now, they're a use of that word or that sentence in a majazi way. In a way which is majazi. Have you all understood majazi? Huh? They say there's a different. That's a good question, and a good question shows that the students understood. Someone can say, what is the difference between urfi and majazi? What is the difference between urfi and majazi? It differs from place to place. The urf can be majaz. They definitely resemble one another.
It's not accepted by everyone. For example, like slang is not something that's recognized by everyone.
نعم, very close. نعم. تفضل.
Majaz uses the actual meaning of the word, whereas oyster is not the actual meaning. It's just a word being used in different ways. So the oyster being seen.
صح, that is one of the differences. Where majaz, you're actually using the word. لا, majaz, you're not using it for what it is. لا. An attribute. It's not the actual word. مثلا رأيت أسدا على المنبر. I saw an asad, a lion on the minbar. That's not the original meaning of an asad. لا, تفضل.
A metaphor is connected to a place or a local area.
نعم, it can be connected to a local area or urfi. لكن the difference the scholars say is that for majaz, for majaz, the original word of the meaning is, the original word or the original meaning of the word is no longer used. لكن في حقيقة عرفية عفوا عكس for majaz, the actual word, the meaning of the word is actually used. So for example, majaz is رأيت أسدا على المنبر. I saw an asad on the minbar giving the khutbah, صح? That means I saw a رجل شجاع, I saw a brave man, صح? Eloquent and so on. طيب, take the word asad out. Is asad not used in its normal way? Asad, أكله الأسد, هو أكله الأسود, صح? He's been eaten by lions. We're still using the word asad in its normal linguistical form. However, the haqiqah urfiyya, that has now been moved now. It is no longer used the way it was used. More often than not, in a lot of words. For example, oyster. In this community, in the UK method, oyster is the only meaning that it carries now is what? That blue card. That is the only meaning that it carries. Understood? So majaz urfi, majaz, the meaning of that word is still used in its original place. Lakin for urfi, haqiqah urfiyya, that haqiqah or that word is no longer used in its original place. It is used what? In the urf. Again, lakin the urf, the problem with the urf is varies. What is urf for this land is no longer a urf for this land.
Wasn't that the valid definition though for majaz? We said lafz المستعمل في غير المعود عليه. Or we just mentioned there.
But you asked me the difference though. What is the difference? صحيح, majaz is استعمال اللفظ في غير معود عليه. استعمال اللفظ. But it doesn't mean that lafz, we're doing hijrah of that lafz. We leave that lafz alone in its original meaning. So majaz, because we can use them side by side, majaz and haqiqi. Majaz, مثلا أسد على المنبر. حقيقة, رأيت أسدا. You're still using the asad in its haqiqi meaning. طيب. So the Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi rahmatullah, he divides it into three types. Majaz. He divides it into three types. And there's no point dwelling over this. There's no point spending ages on this. Inshallah, we're going to finish it within the next 45 minutes because this is not directly connected to Usul al-Fiqh. If anything, as we shall see in the end of the kitab, in the end of this chapter, many scholars are of the opinion that there is no majaz in the lugha. And we shall see that khilaf. There's no majaz in the lugha aslan. طيب? We're only studying it because we have to study it. So there's three types. The first, majazul mufrad. Majaz mufrad, يعني metonym. A majaz which is mufrad, one word. You're now using one word as majaz. You're using one word as majaz. And that is called, you're borrowing the meaning of that word. Because there's ilaqa, there's tashabuh, there's resemblance between the word that you're using and where you're using the word. So also when it says borrowing, put borrowing due to a resemblance. Under borrowing due to a resemblance. So under borrowing you put what? Due to a resemblance. Right. And it's called al-isti'ara in Arabic. Number one, رأيت أسدا على المنبر. I saw an asad on the minbar. يراد به رجل شجاع. Or you say رأيت أسدا في المعركة. I saw an asad on the battlefield. If I say to you I saw an asad on the battlefield, يقتل, you're not going to think that's a real lion because there would be no battlefield if there was a real lion on the battlefield. صح? طيب, you're going to automatically assume that it is what? That I'm referring to a brave man. So رأيت أسدا على المنبر or رأيت أسدا في المعركة, in the battlefield, that means you're now referring to a brave man. صح? طيب. However, remember the word I said not long ago? Resemblance. Tashabuh. What is the connection between a lion and this man who I'm now praising on the battlefield? Excellent, an attribute. What is the ilaqa? Ilaqa is what? Ash-shaja'a. Ash-shaja'a is the ilaqa. He is brave. The lion is brave. King of the jungle, they call the lion. Sah? So this man now is like a king of the jungle inside the ma'rakah. Or if he's on the minbar, he's given the minbar and he's not scared. Some people, when they're standing in front of people, they get worried, they get nervous and anxious and so on. Like Allah, he's given an eloquent khutbah. He's like a lion on the lion on the minbar. And that can happen, yani. It's not something that is just said. Like I remember years ago, I was in Mecca and we were waiting for the Imam to come out, and this short man came onto the minbar. Miskeen looking man. He came onto the minbar. Thinking, is he the mu'addin? Is he fixing the microphone? What's he doing? So everyone's looking at him. And then the adhan is called. It says, Inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu. And the khutbah, like the masjid just lit up. The khutbah that he gave, like wallahi, it was like acid on the minbar. And that was Shaykh Muhammad al-Imam, hafidhahullah. Shaykh Muhammad al-Imam. Have you not heard when he's giving a khutbah? And he's like a lion on the minbar. Like when you looked at him, he's miskeen. Like as soon as he started to give the khutbah, like everyone was all ears, everyone was listening, everyone was surprised, mashallah, it was a beautiful khutbah. So that is majaz, isti'mal al-majazi. That is a majaz, isti'mal. طيب. So the connection between the lion and this person is the what? The attribute of him being brave. طيب. دخل القمر بيتي. دخل القمر بيتي. The moon entered my home. What is the meaning? دخل القمر. يعني the moon that is up in the sky. Al-Abdu came and knocked on your door. What does that mean? The moon entered my home. نعم زوجة. The zawja, after the zawja, يعني مثلا a man saying my zawja entered my home. The wife came back. Or رجع القمر, or the moon came back. So instead of saying رجعت الزوجة, you say رجع القمر. طيب. Now the qamar, when you say that to someone, no one's going to say what? Wallahi kadhabt. La, no one's going to say, the moon did not come. The moon's up there, I saw it. I can say it. No one's going to say that. Why? Because now you're referring to it in its majazi use. طيب. Now what is the ilaqa? What is the connection between the moon and his wife in terms of beauty? In terms of beauty. That is the ilaqa. And that is important. Hold on to that, ilaqa, or even put aside, ilaqa is extremely important. طيب. So that is majaz mufrad. So that is only a word that you're borrowing and you're putting it in other than its form, other its correct use. طيب. The next is majazun mursal. It is a majaz that is mursal. It is unrestricted majaz. And it's mursal because there are so many types of it. طيب. Now the ilaqa here is not tashabuh. There's no resemblance. There's no resemblance, as we shall see. Lakin the usage of those words is still different to the original linguistic meaning of that word. مثلا رعينا المطر is the example that the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi mentions. And we took care of the rain, meaning the pashta. Although in that example it really means the camels grazed the rain. In reality that's what it means. And the Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, he explains that in his sharh. The meaning is really the camels grazed the rain. Camels, or mathalan, or the sheep or whatever it may be, when they go out to the ushb or the grass, they what? They eat the grass. Sah? They graze. طيب. So when we say ra'ayn al-matar, to say they ate or they grazed the matar, the rain, is that true? Like, is the rain there and they're now eating the rain? No. Like, why did we say ra'ayn al-matar? Why does the Shaykh say ra'ayn al-matar? It is sababiyya. Because the rain is a sabab for the ushb to come out. The pastures, it is a sabab, it is a reason. أي العشب والنبات فأطلق المطر وأريد النبات فأطلق المطر يعني the rain has been mentioned لكن all the meaning is وأريد لكن what is wanted, what is mentioned is or referred to, is the nabat. طيب. Also another example, the third example, if we go back to the third one, the al-hadf, the third one, well it should say 3, it says 2 anyway, change it. Al-hadf, to omit something, to omit something. Al-hadf, number 3. Can you see it? يعني 2 lines down. قال جل وعلا واسأل القرية التي كنا فيها. واسأل القرية. Ask the qarya, ask the village that we were in, that we were with. Ask the village. واسأل القرية. طيب, what does the village consist of? What does a village consist of? Houses, inhabitants, what else? Ashjar, people. طيب, so واسأل القرية, go and ask the qarya. Does it mean go and ask the walls, the houses, the trees? لا, so يعني القرية ماذا؟ أي أهل القرية. أي اسأل أهل القرية. There's a hadf. It has been omitted, it has been taken out. واسأل أهل القرية. So that is majaz, they say. That is majaz, and what is meant is أهل القرية, the people of the qarya. No one's expecting you to go and ask the trees and the houses and so on. طيب. أي أهل القرية فحذفت كلمة أهل مجازا. So the word أهل has been taken out. مجازا. And an example of that, a contemporary example in English language is when I said earlier on, it is like an oven outside. It is like an oven outside. I've taken the word oven and now I've put it used it in another way, which is to say, it is hot outside. But that can also be mufrad, majaz mufrad. Why? Because the oven is usually what? Hot. And outside it is hot. So there's a alaqa. There's a resemblance. Is that understood? The next, or the one we skipped, number 2, a-ziyada. A-ziyada. And in general, it's better to write a-sila. A-sila. A-ziyada, ta'adduban ma'a kitab Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having etiquette with the kitab of Allah, and not saying anything is zaid or ziyada in there. Naam. So a-sila, which is a connection, for example. طيب. ليس كمثله شيء. This is an example that is used often for majaz. They say that the kalima, the kaf here is zaid. It is ta'keed. Ta'keed لنفي المثل عن الله جل وعلا. طيب. ليس كمثله شيء. طيب. If it was to be said ليس مثله شيء, the meaning is what? ليس مثله شيء. The meaning is still correct. There is none like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. صح? Why has the cat been put there? The ta'keed. The ta'keed. So we don't say zaid, lakin say ta'keed. Okay? لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. That kaf cannot have its real meaning here. It cannot have its real meaning. Kaf is what? Likening. Naam. Muhammadun ka'aliyin. صح. So if we say the kaf has its real meaning here, it will mean what? ليس كمثل الله مثل. لا, النفي إثبات becomes in reality you're affirming that there is someone like. So in English it will be you're saying there is none like the one that is like Allah. There is none like the one that is like Allah. Obviously that is not the intended meaning. So that's why the scholars, they say that kaf, some say zaid, like it's not zaid, لتأكيد المعنى or لتوكيد المعنى. Is that understood? And you're affirming that there is definitely nothing unlike Allah Jalla wa Ala. And the Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi, he says, for this example, he says وَمَثَّلُوا بِهِ, يعني وَمَثَّلُوا بِهِ, meaning that he doesn't agree with that example. نعم. وَمَثَّلُوا لِلْمَجَازِ بِالزِّيَادَةِ. So the Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi doesn't even agree with that example because of the wording that he used, وَمَثَّلُوا بِهِ, in the matan. طيب. نعم. وَالْعَلَاقَةُ, نعم. So that's the second one. مجاز عقلي. مجاز عقلي. If you find this difficult, I don't blame you. It hasn't nothing. It's to do with ilm al-balagha. It's not to do with usul al-fiqh. The only reason why the Shaykh mentions it is because it is studied in usul al-fiqh. So, if you don't understand it, delete this lesson from your memory, and inshallah, when we start al-amr, the next lesson, that is when يعني usul al-fiqh in reality starts, because al-amr يعني command يقتضي الإيجاب وجوب and so on. طيب. Like in Majaz, aql, we have to study because it's in the book. Right. This is a psychological metaphor or a figure of speech. So it is a majaz fil isnad. Majazun fil isnad. You're now using majaz in the sense that you're attributing an action to other than its doer. And the example is وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ. And the earth brings out its burden, everything that is in it. وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ. The ard is the one that is now bringing out, sah? But in reality, who is the one that is bringing it out? Allah Jalla wa Ala. Allah Jalla wa Ala. So they say that is majaz aqli, and it will come to mind that that is not what is meant. طيب. أنبت المطر العشب. العشب. أنبت المطر العشب. The rain caused the grass to come out. The rain caused the grass to come out. طيب. In that example, it says what? The rain is the reason for the ushb to come out, sah? Like in reality, who is the musabbib? Who is the one that is causing for the rain, the grass to come out? Allah Jalla wa Ala. طيب. And the third example, which is slightly easier to understand, بنى الأمير الدار أو البيت أو المسجد. مثلا بنى الأمير, the Amir, the prince, built al-masjid, the masjid. The Amir built the masjid, the prince. طيب. Who's ever seen a prince building a masjid with his gear and putting the bricks down and so on? Doesn't happen. Umaluhu, his workers, they're the ones that built the masjid. Like, what does it mean? He paid for it and he gave the command for it to be built. Like in reality, who built the masjid? The umal, the people the workers, the construction, the people that working at the construction side of the masjid. They're the ones that built the masjid. Like if someone says bana al-amiru al-masjida, is that wrong? La, it is not wrong. What do you understand from it? He sponsored it. He paid for it. He gave the command. He gave the permission for it to be built. So they say, the scholars rahmatullah alayhim, they say that that is majazun aqli. Majazun aqli. طيب. لكن there's another masala that we need to understand, that there are two conditions for majaz to be correct. Two conditions for majaz to be correct. طيب. The first condition, so write this down because it's not on there, and it's in the matan of the shaykh, like it's muddled up with other words. So write al-majazu la yasihhu illa bishartain. Al-majazu, majaz is not correct and it's not acceptable illa bishartain, except with two conditions. Number one, أن يوجد دليل صحيح, that we have a correct dalil, evidence, يمنع من إرادة المعنى الحقيقي. يمنع من إرادة المعنى الحقيقي. We have to have a correct evidence or dalil that the meaning, the original meaning is not meant, that prevents us from understanding the word in its original form. For example, رأيت أسدا على المنبر. I saw an asad على المنبر. That part, على المنبر, on the minbar, that is what prevents us from understanding the real meaning of an asad in this sentence. Why? Because the asad, the lion, does not come on the minbar, or cannot come on the minbar and give a khutbah. Otherwise there will be no hudur, there will be no people there. Is that understood? Right. And also, for example, رأيت أسدا في المعركة. رأيت أسدا, I saw a lion في المعركة, on the battlefield. This word of asad now, what prevents me from understanding it in its normal linguistic form? في المعركة, on the battlefield. A lion will not be on the battlefield. Is that understood? So there is something which is preventing you from understanding it in the correct. مثلا مثلا دخل القمر بيتي ورجع القمر إلي. The moon came into my home, or the moon came back. What is preventing me, or what is preventing you as the sami', the one that is listening, from understanding the real meaning of the moon? في بيتي, في البيت, إلى البيت. That end part, that last part is what is preventing you from understanding that the real moon is the one that has come back into the house, or returned to the house. صح? طيب مثلا, if someone's, the example I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, if someone saved his wife's number as qamar, يتصل بك القمر. The qamar is calling you. Obviously the real qamar is not calling you. Now we understand that there's something preventing you from using the haqiqah. That is extremely important. That is extremely important, because now Ahlul Bid'ah cannot come and say وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا سَوًّا وَجَاءَ أَمْرُ رَبِّكَ. Ahlul Bid'ah will come and say what? وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ. La, that's not the correct meaning. وَجَاءَ أَمْرُ رَبِّكَ. The command of your Lord came down. يَنزِلُ رَبُّنَا أي ينزل أمر ربنا. The command of our Lord, or rahmatu rabbina, or the mercy of our Lord. We say to them what? La. What is preventing us from understanding it in its real form? An-nuzul, descending, is wadih, it's clear. Waja'a, he came, that is clear. What is preventing me from understanding it in its correct form? There's nothing preventing me. So they can't say waja'a rabbuka. So there's no madkhal, no entry point for Ahlul Bid'ah to come in and start using the Quran and the Sunnah in a majazi way. And we shall see that when we're talking about the khilaf. طيب. نعم. So what is the first condition? No, there has to be a dalil that is sahih, that prevents us from understanding its correct meaning. طيب. The second condition is أن توجد علاقة بين المعنى الحقيقي والمعنى المجازي. أن توجد علاقة بين المعنى الحقيقي والمعنى المجازي. There has to be a connection between the ma'na that is majazi, that we're now using it in other than its correct place, and the haqiqi, the ma'na, the real meaning of that word. And that's what we said where there was a alaqa. Mathalan, the brave man example and the lion. What is the connection between the brave man and the lion? The alaqa is what? Shaja'a. What is the connection between the wife and the moon? In the beauty, where we said the qamar. Is that understood? طيب. So there has to be that connection. And if there isn't that connection, then that is abath. You're mocking the person that's listening to you. So a person can't say to his wife, Anti farasun, or Anti jamalun, you are a camel, or Anti ghabiyatun. And then he said, why you say that? He goes, I meant Anti taliq, I meant that she's divorced. No, you can't come and you can't say that. Why? What's the ilaqa? What is the ilaqa between faras and talaq? There's no ilaqa. There's no connection. For example, مثلا, a person cannot say that example, the example of the talaq. He can't say Anti مثلا Anti كالخبز فخرج, you're like khubz, so get out. And I meant divorce. لا. لماذا? Because what is the connection between the khubz and divorce? There's no connection. So if there is no connection, then you cannot use majaz al-mursal. You can't use majaz in this way. You can't use majaz unless there is a connection, a ilaqa. Is that understood? طيب. The last point, the last masala, the Shaykh says rahimahullah, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, تنبيه. He wants to bring something to your attention. تقسيم الكلام إلى حقيقة ومجاز, splitting kalam, speech, into what? حقيقة, into reality, and majaz, into a way that is majazi. هو المشهور عند أكثر المتأخرين في في القرآن وغيره. It is the most popular opinion or common opinion amongst the متأخرين, the scholars that came after the first 3 generations, في القرآن وغيره, in the Quran, in other than the Quran, meaning in the Arabic language. وقال بعض أهل العلم. طيب. So now the Shaykh is mentioning the khilaf in Majaz. هل هناك مجاز في القرآن أو لا؟ أو هل هناك مجاز في اللغة أو لا? The Shaykh is talking about this مسألة. Is there Majaz أصلا? Is there something called Majaz in the Lugha, in the Arabic language, and in the Quran? Is that understood? So the Shaykh mentions, he's going to mention 3 opinions, 2 or 3 opinions. The first opinion he says is that Majaz is in the Quran and in the Arabic language. Write that down. Write it down as it is. That Majaz is found in the language, the Arabic language, and it is also found in the Quran and the Sunnah. So what was that first opinion? It is mawjood in the Lugha and in the Quran. The next opinion is that it is found in the Lugha and not in the Quran. It is not found in the Lugha, it is not found in the Quran, but it is found in the Lugha, in the Arabic language. طيب. And the third opinion is that it is not found in the Lugha, there's no Majaz in the Lugha, and there's no Majaz in the Quran. How many opinions? 3 opinions. The Shaykh says رحمه الله حقيقة أنه هو المشهور عند أكثر المتأخرين في القرآن وغيره. وقال بعض أهل العلم, and some of the scholars say. So the first opinion are those that say what? There's majaz in the Quran in the Arabic language. صح? وقال بعض أهل العلم, and some scholars say لا مجاز في القرآن. There's no majaz in the Quran. لكن there's majaz in the what? In the Arabic language. وقال آخرون, and other scholars say لا مجاز في القرآن ولا في غيره, and there's no majaz in the Quran and in other than the Quran. وقال به ماذا؟ قال بأي قول؟ الثالث وبه قال. If you ever hear a damir, you always go back to أقرب المذكور, the one that was the closest that is mentioned. وبه قال يعني the fact that there's no majaz in the Quran or in the Arabic language. Abu Ishaq al-Isfaraini, one of the scholars of the Shafi'iyah. ومن المتأخرين العلامة الشيخ محمد الأمين الشنقيطي. Sheikh Amin Shanqiti is from those scholars that say there's no majaz in the Lugha, in the Arabic language, and in the Quran. Obviously not in the Quran either. وقد بين شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمة الله عليه وتلميذه ابن القيم أنه اصطلاح حادث بعد انقضاء القرون الثلاثة المفضلة. And also Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and Sheikh and his student Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, and they were also of the opinion that there's no majaz in the Lugha and there's no majaz in the Quran. There's no majaz in the Quran and there's no majaz in the Quran or Lugha. ونصره بأدلة قوية كثيرة تبين لمن اطلع عليها أن هذا هو القول الصواب. And هذا هو القول الصواب. So Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah also is on that opinion. The fact that it is what? There's no majaz in the Quran, and there's no majaz in the Lugha, and obviously there's no majaz in the Quran. Is that understood? How many opinions do we have so far? 3. The first say there's majaz in the Quran and in the Arabic language. The second say la, there's no majaz in the Quran, but it is found in the language. And then there are those that say what? It is not found in either. طيب. Those that say there's majaz in the Lugha and in the Quran, their dalil is al-wuqu'. It's the fact that we do find majaz in the Quran and in the language. مثلا واسأل القرية. القرية, everyone knows that we don't mean the walls and everyone knows that. That's not the intended meaning. The intended meaning is واسأل أهل القرية. Ask the people of the Qaryah. that shows, they say that it is found in the Quran. Also, جدار يريد أن ينقض. What was the verse in Surah Kaf? جدار يريد. That's the محل الشاهد. أي جدار, a wall that wants. طيب, is that يعني, can we say that that's the wall, it has a mind and it intends and it wants? جدار يريد أن ينقض. لا, of course not. So they say that is majaz. The irada, or the intent, has been attributed to it, ascribed to it, majazan. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ. Lower the wing of humility. Humility, dhul, does it have janah? Does it have wings? La, they say that it is majaz. So they say the fact that it is found in the lugha, and also the example of رأيت أسدا على المنبر. طيب, رأيت القمر, يكلمني القمر. These examples, because of that, is clearly found in the language and in the Quran. And the biggest dalil is that it is there, it is present. ما له من دافع. You can't, there's no point, no way of rejecting it. Is that understood? طيب. For those that say the second opinion, that say what? It is found in the what? In the language, but not in the Quran. They say the reason why it's not found in the Quran is because majaz, you can say that you're lying. You can be lying. You can disbelieve in majaz. صح? So مثلا, you can say to me, رأيت أسدا على المنبر. I'll say, والله كذبت. لا, هذا رجل على المنبر. That is a man on the minbar. More asad. That's not an asad. That's not lying. صح? طيب. Or مثلا, دخل القمر بيتي. You say to me, دخل البيت, قمر بيتي. The moon entered my home. I say, لا, والله هذه امرأة that entered your home. This is a امرأة, this is a lady. So because you can disbelieve it, and because it is okay for me to say كذبت, then we can't say anything in the Quran is that you can say anything in the Quran is kadhib. Because majaz is kadhib, they're saying. And we can't say anything in the Quran is kadhib. Therefore it is not found in the Quran like it is found in the what? In the lugha. And the reason why it's found in the lugha is al-wuqu', the fact that it is in the lugha. The fact that when I say to you رأيت أسدا على المنبر or رأيت أسدا في المنبر ورأيت أسدا في المعركة, automatically what comes to your mind is not the real Asad, like what comes to mind is a brave man. So because of that connection, there's majaz in the lugha. Is that understood? What's left? لا مجاز في القرآن ولا في اللغة, صح? There's no majaz in the Quran or in the language. And the scholars that say that, they say the fact that obviously majaz, you can say it is kadhib. It is kadhib. Therefore, it is not found in the Arabic language and in the Quran or in the Sunnah. As for saying that it is found, it is in there, it is there. طيب. They say la. The meaning that you've understood is incorrect. It is not a majaz. There's no majaz. That is in reality, that's what it means. So for example, they will say to you when you talk to a person that understands the Arabic language in general, and you say to him, رَأَيْتُ أَسَدًا فِي الْمَعْرَكَةِ, that person automatically understands what you're referring to. That is not a majaz use. That is the haqiqah use of the word. حقيقة عرفية يعني حقيقة لغوية. لا, not عرفية, حقيقة لغوية. They're saying that is the correct use of the word. Or مثلا, when you're referring to someone that is beautiful and you're saying they are like the qamar, they're saying that is the haqiqah of the Arabic language. That is the haqiqah of the Arabic language. So it's not that there's majaz in there, but that's what the Arabic language means. And they say that the words are understood via the context. Words don't have a meaning on their own. They're understood via or through the context. So the fact that now you know that there's a brave man on the battlefield, you've understood that through the context that it is in. Not the fact that Asad is majaz for a brave man, lakin the fact that lughatan, linguistically, that I understand from the ma'raka part that is the context of the word that I'm using. So it is haqiqah in its linguistical meaning. I am using this word in its correct meaning. طيب. Also, they say that this is a uslub from the asalib lugha. This is a uslub. Yani those that say it is wajib, that it is found in the Quran and the Sunnah, they say that why can we not say majaz is in the Quran? The Quran was revealed in what language? In Arabic. And majaz is from the uslub of the what? Of the Arab. Therefore there's no gharaba, it's not strange to say that there's majaz in the Quran because the Quran was revealed in the Arabic language. For that, they say la. In order to refute that, they say la. Not everything that is used in the Arabic language is used in the Quran. Not everything, every sloob, or not every context or word that is used, or siyagh, that is used, for example majaz, even if you say it is used in the language, then we can't say it's used in the Quran because majaz is a sloob, it is a way. There are many ways or many parts in the Arabic language that are not used in the Quran and the Sunnah. طيب. على كل حال, that khilaf exists. Lakin, what is important to understand is that there are scholars that say, scholars from Ahlul Sunnah, maybe even the majority that say that majaz is found in from the evidences of Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn Qayyim, Muhammad Amin Shinqiti, and Abu Ishaq al-Isfara'ini, and Ibn Uthaymin, and those scholars that say there's no majaz in the lugha and in the Arabic language, their evidences is the fact that it wasn't known in the Qur'an al-Mufaddala from the Salaf al-Salih, the Sahaba, the Tabi'un, and the Atba'u Tabi'in. It wasn't used. Sah? It wasn't used. Then the others, the Mujumhur, they come back and say, la, it was used in the words of Imam Ahmad, in the words of Imam Bukhari, and even the hadith, inna wajadnahu bahra, we found it to be a bahr, a horse that the Messenger ﷺ used, he said it was a bahr. Lakin, whether we say it is in the language and it is in the Quran or not, that does not open a door for Ahlul Bid'ah to come and now say that the attributes of Allah, the sifat of Allah Jalla wa Ala are now majazi. It is not permissible for them to do so. So, like, مثلا, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and Shaykh ibn Qayyim, they fought hard against what? The Ash'ari, the Mu'tazila, and so on. That's why the majority of the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, not the majority, but a large chunk of the books of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah is on the ilm of, the tawheed of al-asma' wa sifat. Because Ahlul Bid'ah during his time, they would negate the names and attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala. طيب. So they've used majaz as a ladder to negate the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they say, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, la, stawla. Stawa, majaz. Stawla is the correct meaning. So there's no stawa. Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. They negate that. They do ta'wil and say that is majazi. They say istiwa, istawla, afwan. Stawla ala al-arsh. And that is batil. That is obviously batil. So this khilaf is a khilaf that is found within Ahlul Sunnah. Lakin under no circumstances can Ahlul Bid'ah now come into this khilaf and say, right, because there's majaz in the lugha and in the Quran, we're now going to negate the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because these two conditions that we studied for majaz, and takuna hunaka alaqa, and that there's something that prevents us from using the ma'na haqiqi, these two conditions being met, they're not found in the names and attributes. وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ. That is incorrect. Why? Because what is the haqiqah between أَمْرُ رَبِّكَ and وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ? What is preventing me from understanding ja'a in its correct haqiqi meaning? Inshallah, when we're studying Asma wa Sifat, we'll go into that further. Lakin, that's the end of the lesson, inshallah. We finished Majaz. Alhamdulillah, now we're going to go on to Amr. And Amr is when reality Usul al-Fiqh starts. Because now Al-Amr yaqtadi al-wujub, al-ijab, and the siyagh al-Amr, the ways of Amr, and so on. We're going to see that, inshallah, in next week's class. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam wa ahkam wa billahi tawfiq.